Broadcasting live from Edgewall Inn on the plain of Eldraine, this is TapTapConcede. Welcome everybody to TapTapConcede. My name is Graham, and joining me is Nelson.
Hello.
And Kathleen.
Hello.
And today we're going back into the Wilds of Eldraine. No, we are experiencing the Wilds of Eldraine for the very first time.
That's right.
We're going back to Eldraine, and we're going to talk a little bit about the story and some of the card previews that we have seen thus far at time of recording. But first, a reminder that everything we do here at Loading Ready Run is brought to you by you and your kind support of our Patreon at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. We really appreciate it. Also, this show is in specific brought to you by Card Kingdom. Please check out cardkingdom.com/LRR. And you can buy your singles there. You can buy your sealed product if you're in the U.S. You can sell cards to them. And you can tell them, Loading Ready Run sent me, button please. And they'll give you a little 1-inch button with a funny thing on it, which currently, I believe, says, time for a Pack 3 pivot. We've all been there and no one's proud of it. Also, one more piece of housekeeping is that at time of airing this episode, this coming Saturday, it's the pre-release. Yes, indeed, the Wilds of Eldraine PPR, Saturday, August 26th, starting at 10 a.m. Pacific, featuring our guests Lady Lavinius, Jumbo Commander, and Senior Wizards of the Coast game designer Chris Mooney, who worked on Wilds of Eldraine, so very excited for that. You're going to want to tune in and get your chance to see the first examples of Wilds of Eldraine sealed gameplay. All I will say is that I have opened my pool, and I didn't know anything about the cards beforehand, and boy, this set looks like a ton of fun. I'm very, very, very excited. And if you can't watch live on the Twitch channel, obviously, then the replay and everything will be up on this very YouTube channel as soon as we possibly can. So, Eldraine.
I will say.
Neat to be back in Eldraine.
Yeah, I will say that, the set is called Wilds of Eldraine. Mm-hmm. You still get to see some of the castles of Eldraine.
Yes.
Especially in the story.
Oh.
Yes.
The tame parts of Eldraine that you know and love are still present in some cards.
As I said in an earlier podcast, when people said, "What do you think the aftermath of the Phyrexian invasion will be?" It's like, they're not unchanged though.
Okay.
Changes have happened because they just got invaded by Phyrexians.
So I haven't read. There's 5 stories.
That's right.
Are they chapters of one story, or are they 5 stories?
No, there are 5 chapters of one story.
Okay, so the 5 chapters of the story have gone up, and you've read them, and I haven't.
I've read them.
But here's my understanding of the groundwork based on the Wilds of Eldraine preview reveal stream.
Okay.
Is that there was the Phyrexian invasion.
Yes.
And a big part of Eldraine's defense was that Talon,
yes,
the fairy king,
yes,
the fairy lord, the lord of Eldraine, returned. I don't know where exactly he was, but he returned and made a deal with the 3 witches.
Correct.
To protect the plane. Each of them got given a fantastical gift for helping in this way. I don't know why they didn't want to protect their plane anyway, but basically you've got
witches.
Yeah. You've got you've got like the snow witch, the like creepy cauldron witch, and the Snow White evil queen witch.
Basically.
Sort of. Like if you're going from sort of like fairy tale tropes, it's
yeah, exactly.
Snow White's evil queen, Elsa, and I don't know, Granny Weatherwax.
No. Hansel and Gretel witch.
Oh yes, right. That's the one. Yes.
No. We I feel like we sort of have a Granny Weatherwax figure, but it's not the Cauldron witch.
So they put all the Phyrexians to sleep.
Yes.
Which is how Eldraine managed to get out less scathed than they would have been. They were not remotely unscathed. No plane came out of this unscathed, but they put all the Phyrexians to sleep. Now the Phyrexians are dormant anyway, thanks to the events of March of the Machine and all that. But that sleep spell, what's the name for it? The
wicked slumber.
The wicked slumber is now seeping into all parts of the plane.
It's not. It.
Are these witches evil?
Well, here's the deal. The let me give you the story. I
Cool,
think
because
this
that's what I
you
know.
Understand.
That's my
Okay.
understanding.
So I will say I have read the story. The story is only, I think, about 25,000 words long.
Also, you can listen to it if you prefer. They've been releasing, and I love this. They've been releasing YouTube videos with the stories read aloud. If you're like, I don't feel like reading, but I can listen while I wash dishes or something.
Or if you just need to go to sleep.
yeah, there you go.
How long are those YouTube videos? They can't be that long.
Not long. I mean, they're on your pages. They're not long.
That's true. I've never clicked on them because I am a read person, not a listen person. But they're there for other people. I appreciate that, everyone likes to engage with stories differently. And an audiobook is the same as reading a book, right? Mm-hmm. So, but
Up with audiobooks.
Yeah.
yes, they're great.
So, what happened?
All right. So, there's also this kid named Kellen,
Right.
who a lot of the story is about. But as I was saying, we still see a lot of familiar places, but things have changed because we just had the Phyrexians invade. And yes, as we know it, the Phyrexians, they were saved. There's a story that features sort of Rankle and Torbran as well, that sort of had like the Phyrexians falling into a slumber and stuff like that after being like drawn to Rankle because he used his love potion on him. He used he wished for a love potion to pour on himself, and that drew all the Phyrexians to him. And then just as they're about to get to Rankle, they all fell asleep, and Rankle fell asleep as well. And everybody was like, good riddance to that jerk. So what happened?
And that was in the March of the Machines.
That was in the March of the Machines story that we saw, the one side story. And then this is sort of like explaining a little bit of what happened. So there's some context for you. I swear I'm getting to the story. But most of the story is about this kid named Kellen who lives in a village. I didn't take per detailed notes.
And Kellen is a half human, half fairy.
Yes, hold up. I just need to...
So they probably never have his size, right?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Probably not. Hold on.
Only bespoke
I'm
clothing.
doing a bad job of explaining, but I really need to set up
Okay.
the Kellen. So we'll say... So that he's really important.
Okay.
But we'll get to him, I suppose. Let me finish telling you about the courts and stuff.
Oh, please.
Okay. So the story starts on the first chapter. I'm just going to do sort of like a rough recap. And I want to make sure I get all my proper nouns correct because I have a bad memory for stuff like that. The story sets up, and we've got Will and Rowan, who are also very important to this story. Very important. Very, very important.
Oh, okay.
And they are having a disagreement, not like physically, but sort of like of opinions about how things should be going. Rowan is very traumatized by what happened, and so is Will, but Will is like being very typical blue mana, and Rowan is being very typical red mana, and so Will is just kind of like detaching himself from his emotions and stuff like that, and Rowan is stewing.
And if I recall correctly, because they have revealed, we don't have to get into the cards right now, but we could throw them up on screen if you're interested in reading while you talk about this. They shared a spark, a planeswalker spark.
Correct. Yes.
And they are among the planeswalkers that are no longer ensparkened.
Yes.
Meaning they can now like operate separately because they were joined by the spark.
Well, yes, but they sort of Rowan sort of discovers that she doesn't have her spark anymore during this story.
Right.
And that makes, I think, her more depressed.
But so we've got like, they both have legendary creature cards. Rowan is like, I'm going to help Eldraine. I'm going to solve these problems with fighting. And Will is like,
No.
I'm going to solve the problems with peace.
Sort of, but
Okay.
not really. Okay. Anyhow.
I'm glad you're here because this is my cursory understanding
Okay.
of things.
Let me explain.
Do it.
So, Will and Rowan are having a debate. Will is fighting a sort of a rebel lord named Imodane. She has sort of taken up as a warlord during the sort of the interregnum after the Kenris were killed. We reveal that the Kenris were killed defending their family from the Phyrexians.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the Will and Rowan watched their dad get stabbed, and basically the last time they saw Lyndon, she was like, take Hazel and Eric, which are their two younger siblings, and keep them safe. And then she goes to help fend off the Phyrexians, and they both get killed. And they both see this happen.
I didn't know there were younger siblings.
Yes. So they have two younger siblings, Hazel and Eric, and they're going through a lot, and the kingdoms have all splintered and fell. And so Will has declared himself High King. He says, well, my dad died. We don't have time to send someone on a quest. We need someone to lead now because things have been, our whole world is shattered, and we have this spreading curse. We can't wait to investigate it. And so he's trying to like rally the remaining people around him and stuff like that.
That makes sense to me. Is going on a quest typically a prerequisite for becoming King of Eldraine?
Yeah, the issue being you're supposed to go on the high quest. Which that is how Kenrith became king.
So it's not hereditary.
No.
Oh, so under typical circumstances,
the
High King would die, or before he dies, he would send someone on a quest. Or?
I don't know. I don't think that's ever. But under typical circumstances, they would basically be like, I think they would have had time to go on a quest,
right.
But this happened rather suddenly, and then once your heir has completed the quest, then you hand the king over.
Okay, now I'm into the politics.
So there's a setup where, Will now is acting as the king, but there's going to be people who want to usurp, and they have some basis, and
that's why he's fighting Imodane. He's trying to be like, no, rally behind me. We need to all come together to solve this problem. It is important. Right.
And some people are like, but you didn't do the quest.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay.
We want to follow someone who's done the quest.
Including Rowan. Rowan thinks her brother is too soft and too talky. Basically, Will is going around and being like, look, I know you want to fight, but please can we work together for now? Right.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe you could, is like, I am the High King. My father is the High King. I am High King kind of way, putting his foot down, but in a very like conciliatory blue, it's very blue Banner. Okay, he's representing his color pie very well. Rowan is like, but everything is trash and you didn't do this and stuff like that. And it's like, you're talking and these people aren't going to respect you because you're just talking. You need to punch them. You need to do this. And it seems being separated has made the amount of magic that they can wield more. They're much more powerful as legendary creatures, it seems. I don't know why, or maybe this is an example of them. So anyhow, Rowan is getting annoyed as Will is fighting Imodane and cleaves off the side of a mountain with an errant lightning bolt. And which scares the crap out of everyone, but also makes Will look weak. So that's not really helpful for anyone. But basically, Imodane and Imodane's men take off, and Imodane runs into they're just like, oh my god, and they run, right? Because Imodane has been fighting Will, and it's not like Will isn't holding his own in the fight. He's doing fine. Rowan thinks he's doing crappy, but he's actually doing fine. But at the same time, then you have this incredible display of power.
I think one of the stories is playing on your phone.
I must have touched my phone. I'm so sorry.
No, that's just very funny.
Okay.
I was like, what's that faint? You wouldn't have heard it on the podcast, but I was like, what's that faint sound? Oh, I think I'm being narrated at.
Okay, so that is what is going on sort of between Will and Rowan, which is really important.
All right.
So they have all of this big problem when we meet Imodane, who's marginally important to the story, but kind of cool. But anyhow, while this is going on, meanwhile, Will and Rowan there's a power struggle. It's basically, who's going to lead.
Mm-hmm.
Politics, Game of Thrones, but not really. Far away. In a village I love this trope. In a village so remote, the Phyrexians never even showed up.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
It's very fairy tale, right?
Must be nice.
Yeah. Is a village that basically all they do is make wool. And basically it's really small.
They just have one sheep?
Yep.
No. They've got like 5 times the amount of sheep than people there, they say. The merchant shows up once a year.
Okay.
Kind of vibes. A very small farming. It's like Orangeshire or something like that. I really wish I had written this.
So
down.
I need you all to roll up level 0 characters, and for the first session, you're just going to be tending the sheep.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe there'll be an event, but probably not.
Yeah, I think this is Eldraine, New Zealand. It's so isolated.
Yeah, the merchant comes to town, and he has a note.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But anyhow, there's this kid. He lives with his mom and his stepdad. His stepdad loves him. His mom loves him. His mom used to be in training to be a witch. So she's like kind of got... I said there's a Granny Weatherwax character. It's not her, and there's not really. But there's some good witches and bad witches.
I'm just saying, every time someone asks, what universes beyond do you want to see? I want to see Discworld.
I know.
Anyway, carry on.
My heart just started
right?
beating fast thinking about how good it would be. Anyhow, but Kellen gets picked on all the time because Kellen is different. People make fun of him for because he's not his real dad. And people say he doesn't belong there. And people say, and he gets beaten up by the other kids. They say, is it true that my real dad was a fairy? Because everybody knows it's his stepdad. And his mom's like, I'll tell you when I'm older, or tell you when you're older. And it doesn't matter who your dad is.
That's still true.
That's true. Yeah, it's funny.
I'll tell you when I'm older.
Maybe
is
we should be
still
walking
accurate.
that, instead for the kids. Just like, I'll tell you when I'm older.
Yeah, it does.
How much older, Dad? I don't know yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who your dad is. We love you. You're our son. That is, I would say, set in stone.
If only that had ever worked once.
I know.
Yeah.
Kellen still feels a longing to go into the woods. So basically, he decides to go.
So do we all.
He decides to go on a quest. Basically, he finds a magical door to the fairy realm that's never opened up to him before, and he feels this incredible longing to go. But his mother's taught him well, and he doesn't like take any food or anything like that. He knows how to negotiate with the fae.
Okay, it is actually a trip to the fairy realm.
Yeah, he
okay.
did. Like a doorway appears at the top of a hill, and he goes through it. It's like very typical.
Okay, because you said you're like, and then a door opens to the fairy realm, and I'm like,
Yes.
are we sure? Because we know that a whole bunch of new doors have just opened.
Yeah,
in
no,
the
no,
whole-
right.
in
Yeah.
the multiverse.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is the fairy realm just like some vivisection bay?
No. It really is. And
Okay.
he meets Talion.
Oh, right. Yes, the Fey King.
Yes, the Fey King. And the Talion gives him a quest. He asks him if you're pure of heart, and Kellen says, I hope. I think I am. I
That's a
hope
good
I
response.
am. It is. And Talion basically says, look, to business then. Witches 3 have this land with slumber plagued. Agatha the hungry lies in wait near her great cauldron in search of heroes to eat. Cruel Hilda has taken winter's crown for her own. Wherever there are lovers and lords, you shall find the beguiling Ariette. Whoever is brave enough to defeat them shall break the curse upon the realm, and for that service earn a boon from my ever full treasury.
Ooh.
So Kellen says, if I do it, I want to know about my dad.
Sure.
And then he says, okay, I'll tell you about your dad. And he says, great, I accept.
All right.
So anyhow, he goes, and the first village, he goes to the next village over. And he finds, he sort of does some investigating. He's like, excuse me, have you seen any witches?
Classic.
It's great. It's perfect. Oh, yes. And Talion gives him, they're like sword hilts. But they're not swords. They're just these beautiful, like, made of wood sword hilts.
Weird.
Yeah, he doesn't know how to use them. But he's like, well, I'm sure they're magical.
I've seen the art on his card. So they sort of, because this was also part of the reveal stream. They look like Kratos's like fire whips.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
Anyhow, so he
But
does.
but we don't know that in the story yet. Sorry,
No,
I've
yes.
skipped ahead by
Sorry
reading
for-
cards.
That's okay.
Previews. Yeah.
Anyhow, sorry, am I taking too long?
No.
I can do this faster.
No, you're fine.
Okay, so anyhow, he goes out and he accepts the quest. He goes to the next village over and is literally just like, have you seen any witches? And then somebody is like, oh, son, you know what? There's a lady here who bakes pies. She's they're so good it may as well be witchcraft. Have a dollar and get a pie, right? Like, it's very sweet. So he goes to wait in line for the pies because lots of people are. And he sort of notices that, like, some guy, there's like a guard who's slumped over and he's drooling because he's asleep, and there's these little tendrils of purple mist around him, and like the drool has started to rust his armor
Wow.
because he's been sleeping for so long. And he falls over, and Kellen goes to, like, help him up because he's like, okay, look, if people are just stepping over him, right? Well, he falls over, and he goes to pick him up, and then he gets grabbed, and he meets Ruby, who is a smart kid who lives around here with her older brother, no parents in the picture, and she says, don't touch them, you might get the sleeping curse. Right? So, basically explains things to him. Somebody comes along with a shovel and props the guy up a second later, right? So it's not like people don't care, but people are avoiding it, right? Because they don't know how you get the sickness or whatever. So anyhow, basically he meets her and explains what's going on, and she's like, oh my God, you precious idiot, you're going to get killed. But eventually they decide to go out, and Kellen sort of wins her over and says, no, this is an important quest, we have to, this is a terrible curse. And she's like, you know what, fine, because she is also a headstrong young girl as well. And so basically they go out into the woods, and they're going through the woods sort of figuring things out, and they get, they see, oh yeah, and Ruby's brother is missing. That's the important thing.
Sure,
Sorry.
her older brother is supposed to be taking care of her?
Yes, so she's living as an
wow.
orphan right now, but her brother's gone missing after going out into the woods, so she needs to investigate that. And so Kellen says he'll help her. That's how they come to an accord.
More bargains.
They,
He's
they're
got-
working.
He's got a ledger. He's got like the stuff he's doing for Talion, and now he's got like the agreement with Ruby.
Yes, he believes it is a very true and heroic and noble quest, and he's definitely a very good boy.
Okay.
It's very sweet, and so she's like, "Oh, fine, you're gonna get yourself killed, you goofball. Sure, if you think you're so noble and can do it because you have, you're on a quest from the Fey Lord, then sure, maybe you can help me find my brother. I'm kind of desperate." So anyhow, they do that. They go in the woods. They get chased by a mysterious wolf-masked huntsman who almost kills them, but they sneak by. And then they stumble upon a fairy tale cottage with a witch inside who's leaning over like this horrible bubbling cauldron. And who does she have tied up in her cottage?
Ruby's brother?
No, Imodane, the knight that Will defeated.
Is this Agatha?
Yes, this is Agatha.
We have a card for Agatha.
Yes. So they meet her, and she's very distracted by Imodane, who she's getting ready to eat, who is all tied up and subdued.
Agatha's gift from Talion in exchange for helping was I think it was either physically the cauldron or the power of the cauldron, and basically anyone that she puts in the cauldron and eats, she gets their power.
I see. So that's okay. Interesting. I feel like I had assumed the cauldron was her gift because, but that had not been confirmed. But it seems like that's her magical item.
Yeah, no surprise. Ariette's gift was the apple.
Yes.
And
Hilda's was the crown.
Hilda's was the ice crown. Yeah. So there you go.
This is just I feel,
Agatha's soul cauldron. There you go.
Yeah. Oh, they get legendary cards. That makes sense. All right. So anyhow, she's going to put Imodane in the cauldron. But Will and Ruby show up as she is super distracted by this. And they're like, no plan. Let's just improvise. So while she's distracted, Kellen just runs in and dumps her into the cauldron. He's just like, bam. And that's it.
Oh, nice. Good call.
They try to rescue Imodane, but she's too weak to help them. Right, and so they get rid of Agatha fairly easily, and then the sort of Agatha's magic dissipates because she gets eaten by her own cauldron, and it turns out this terrifying wolf-masked huntsman was Ruby's kidnapped brother Peter, who had been brought under Agatha's control using her magic.
I like that this is sort of also there's the Hansel and Gretel shove the witch into her own oven kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So there is already a Hansel and Gretel analog characters in here, and they're not these two, but I like that they sort of have that same kind
Ruby's
of thing.
Red Riding Hood, right?
Yes,
So.
but there is do you remember the Curious Pair from
Yes.
from original Eldraine? So that was Hansel and Gretel, right? Hansel didn't make it, but Greta's out for revenge.
Ah, yes.
Okay.
She's another card. We'll get to Greta. Continue.
So that happens, and they're like, and then he explains what's going on. He's like, I need to bring this boon back to the Fey King. Like the Fey King is trying to take back the boons he's granted them. Right. So they hoist the cauldron out of they get Peter's help to hoist the cauldron out of the cabin, and then suddenly there's a doorway there. So Kellen takes the cauldron and returns it to the Fey King, who says, great job, you did it. All right, 1 witch down, 2 to go. This one we don't God, what does he say to him? This is important.
To be clear here, it's like Kellen has to go and like trick or kill or connive with 3 different witches, bring back 3 super powerful items to this fairy king.
Yes.
Who themselves, one would assume, is also quite powerful and could maybe do some of this on their own. And in return, gets to have a little chat.
Yeah. He gets to be told who him dad be.
That's what he asked for.
I know.
Maybe the real lesson of the story of Wilds of Eldraine is like get better at negotiating.
Yeah, I would like to know who my dad is, and also, like some money for lunch.
All right, here's what
Maybe some new shoes.
something that's not a sheep. No, he has a sheep dog as well at home. Anyhow, here's what Talion says when he defeats Agatha. Hilda is the next witch you seek. Her magic is great, her skill yet grander. She has concealed herself from my eyes. But consult the mirror Indralin, and you may yet find her. Torn from Castle Vantris by Gara Grandsquall, it now lies far from its home. Worry not, my wisdom will save you the trouble of hunting it down. A beanstalk grows not half a day's ride from here. Climb it, and you shall find the mirror at its peak.
There is also a Jack of the Beanstalk analog.
Yes,
as well. Exactly.
So,
But it looks like Kellen's also just doing all the fairy tales.
correct. Yes, this is all like lots of classic fairy tales.
Nice.
Anyhow, now so that's sort of like that's what happening with Kellen in chapters 1 and 2. What is Rowan doing in chapters 1 and 2? Because we have two sort of storylines going back and forth, which I kind of like them blended together in the same story rather than main character story and side story. Because typically in writing, when you're writing like a longer piece of prose, eventually you run out of things to say about that one character right then, because you just need to get them to the next plot development, and it helps to have a B team to cut to, just so you can check in with some other people.
Keeping it fresh.
Yeah, exactly. So Rowan, meanwhile, decides she's like, I'm out of here. Peace, Will. I can't work with you anymore. And she goes hunting down to try and, find something to do. She is like, I need to figure out how we can cure this stupid wicked slumber. You're trying to unite people. I just want to go out and like start punching heads already, right? Mm-hmm. Anyhow, so she goes looking around and she has this dream that tells her to come to Castle Ardenvale. I think that I might have gotten Rowan's motivation wrong there. She gets a magical dream that tells her to go to Castle Ardenvale.
Okay.
She basically blasts her way into Castle Ardenvale. She decides to be incredibly dramatic about it instead of just like walking in. She just like
Surely they'd be okay to just let her in.
Well, she like sends lightning up the stairs and blasts open the doors, and it turns out they're not okay to let her come in.
Oh.
There's sleeping knights there.
Okay.
But they attack her as she comes in.
But they're asleep.
But they're asleep. They're completely asleep. So she has to fight her way through.
Huh.
But she obviously does because she's awesome and she's Rowan. And she's like, I was told to come here because I saw a vision of my whole family got back together.
Who used to be in charge of Castle Ardenvale?
The Kenris.
Oh.
That's her home.
Okay.
But it's torn apart and invaded by the Phyrexians. But she goes back to her house and basically she goes back home and finds all like a bunch of sleeping cursed knights there who are all enchanted to protect the place.
Bummer.
Yeah, it's kind of like bad. But she goes out there.
Like if you've had a rat problem before, it's like that, but worse.
Yeah.
Because instead of rats, it's magically enchanted knights who are asleep but will also attack you. So similar.
Also, they don't fit in the traps.
Yeah. No, and they have families who might be awake. And, you've got to treat them humanely.
That's a good point.
These are like your, employees, essentially.
I don't get the vibe that Rowan's into treating people humanely at the moment. But
No,
maybe
that's
I'm wrong.
fair. She hasn't treated anyone humanely in the story so far.
Yeah.
Horrible bosses.
Yeah.
Part
3, the Planeswalker edition.
Rowan, as we mentioned, Rowan has pieced out and she has sent a missive to her brother. Her and her brother having a disagreement. She wants to say to him, I'm right to be angry. Our world's collapsing around us and we don't have any clear answers. You want to sit at home and wait for them to show up. I'm tired of waiting. Why does that make you so afraid of me? Because she's blowing people up and blasting the sides off mountains while she's doing it because she's really angry. So anyhow, she gets a dream that tells her to go to Castle Ardenvale, and she goes there and she finds all of these enchanted knights sleeping. But also protecting the castle. In the center of the castle, on the throne room, sits Ariette. And Ariette is like, my love, my darling, I'm so glad you've come to find me. I sent you that dream. I'm so glad you're home. And she's like, what? And Ariette's like, I'm your aunt, basically, because we remember that Rowan, no, it's true.
Oh.
She's not lying. Rowan and Will's backstory is that King Kenrith went on the high quest and got seduced by a very powerful witch who put him under a love spell, and she impregnated herself. She had twins. She was going to kill them and drink their blood to gain their power. She had already killed them when Lyndon showed up, because she was also on the high quest, and used the power in her sword to bring the twins back to life and kill the witch and break the curse over Kenrith.
So is Ariette actually their mom?
No, Ariette is their aunt. Their mom killed them and was going to drink their blood, but there were 4 sister witches, and now there's only 3. And Rowan realizes she looks like Ariette. She's like, oh my God, we are family, right? And Ariette's like, lovely, come home to me. Have you met my friend? I think you'd really like them. Ashiok.
Oh, no.
Sweet.
So, and Rowan's like, and basically is like, Rowan, don't you understand? In the curse, everyone is dreaming that they're happy and that they're back with their families and they are safe. They can't be killed. And there was no Phyrexian invasion where they are dreaming. So I need you. So that's what I'm doing. The wicked slumber isn't a curse, it's a blessing. And Rowan's like, yes, of course, finally, that's how to keep everyone safe from Phyrexian invasions. Exactly what I'll do. I'll help you, Auntie.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's really not good.
Sorry, I was chuckling because when you're talking as Ariette, you're like just barely slipping into the Lorna Schlitzwhistle voice.
Oh.
It's like, the amazing power of my rejuvenating apple.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm trying to show that she's basically being a huge charlatan.
I know, it's great.
So that happens. All right. Meanwhile, Kellen and Hilda feeling good. God, killing one witch was so easy. Or Kellen and Ruby, killing one witch was so easy. Let's go to Hilda. And their brother and Peter is like, whoa, dang. Okay.
Heck no.
So, but the first thing they have to do is climb a beanstalk.
Right.
So they climb, there is a huge beanstalk, and they realize that they have no idea how to climb this. Luckily, they hire a guide. This guide is young, enterprising, for some reason has a flyer advertising his services, which is not really the kind of thing they do in Eldraine. And he's blue because he's a Vidalcan.
Oh.
Who claims to have come from a faraway realm that they do not believe any of these stories of, but he is very strange. He has this strange pulsion that's fizzy and will turn you into a frog.
How many arms does he have?
Just 2.
Okay, because that's relevant for what plane the Vidalcans might be from.
Yeah, he tells them all about his home plane, and they don't believe him at all. I believe a direct quote is Kellen is like, what's a pain circus?
Oh, no. Oh, it's a Ravnican Vidalcan then, right?
Yeah.
Nice. Incredible.
Okay, good.
But he's really good at climbing things because he is claims to be the champion of climbing spires at home. They're not subtle about it at all, which is great. I figured someone enterprising would come through, and I feel that Ravnica is one of the most enterprising planes of all. Mm-hmm. Also, if you're on Ravnica and you see like a magical portal open up, your baseline level is weird. You're probably just going to walk through it.
Yeah.
Right?
What's over there? Do I have anything between now and lunch? No? All right, well, let's see what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Whoops, trapped in Beanstalk Land.
Oh,
better put up flyers.
Yeah. Honestly, he's doing great. He seems to enjoy his line of work.
Thriving in his lane.
Yeah. So he's doing well. And he glides them up the beanstalk. And then they sneak into the castle, the giant's castle. They're so small, they walk under the drawbridge, under the gate. They're mouse sized. The 3 of them are trying to climb the stairs, and then they get found and almost fed to a goose. And Kellen, because Kellen is a farm boy, knows how horrible geese are, which I really appreciate.
Love that.
But one of the guests Lord Yolvo, I think, who's another classic Eldraine character, is like, no, they're fine. It's my birthday and I'm drunk. What do they want to do? And they're like, we'd like to look in the magic mirror, please. And he's like, just let them look. What are they going to do? How are they going to steal it? They're so small. And the giant in charge of the castle is like, yes, sire. And so they get to look in the mirror, and then they see that Castle Vantris has been transformed into an ice castle. And so they're able to get back down the beanstalk, and then they return home, and Peter's like, oh my god, that sounds terrible. I've heard of lots of people dying out there. This is very dangerous. So he gets him a wool cloak. He gives Killen a wool cloak and Ruby a bearskin jacket, essentially, because that's what they have.
Nice.
He's like, you have to turn back if once you can't feel the tip of your nose. And they're like, absolutely, will do, sir. And then they do not. They go out, they decide to do it even though it's really cold. They get attacked by ice giants, and Kellen finally figures out how to use his weapons to free Ruby by them. And then the wind is talking to them and saying, turn back. Because the wind is Hilda, the Ice Queen. And she's like, turn back. And they're like, no, we really need to do this. Our quest is important.
Just let it go.
Yeah, she's like, turn back and leave me alone. And it's like, and Kellen's like, I must to find out my true father and break the wicked slumber upon the land. And she's like, I'll kill you. And they're like, no. And then Kellen collapses due to the cold. So Ruby picks him up and she's like, well, I got a bearskin cloak and I'm more hardy than this weakling, and carries him. And then Hilda's like, seriously, turn back. And she's like, never. And basically goes on until she absolutely collapses. And Hilda has a little talk with Hilda and is like, she says, I think you're lonely. Otherwise, you wouldn't be still talking to us. You would have killed us by now. And it turns out that was exactly the case. Hilda was lonely and was just wanted to be alone and was kind of depressed a little bit. Hilda's not a bad witch.
Okay.
So she eventually relents, brings them inside, warms them up, and gives them food. And
she is Elsa having a bad day. All right.
Yes, and surrenders her crown willingly.
Oh, cool.
Because she's like, I don't need this much power. My sister has always wanted. She gives them some backstory about what's going on. She also basically she takes care of them, but she also tells them actually what happened. Because Talion, remember, said witches 3 cursed this land.
Yeah.
Hilda tells them that in fact Talion and the witches 3 cursed this land because they discussed and they figured that they could put, if they all had their powers together, they could put the invaders to sleep. That's how they could repel them. They couldn't injure them enough, but they could stop them.
Are you saying the fairy king may not have been 100% honest?
I know.
I, for one, am shocked.
I know. So anyhow, Hilda says, now we could have done this when we were 4 sisters, but one of our number is no more. That's Will and Rowan's mom.
Right, okay.
But, she was the most powerful of us. But she thinks that what has happened is that Ariette has used the power of her boon to try and spread the curse even more. Because Ariette has always wanted power, and she does not. And so she just wanted to be left alone and to do her own thing. But then she realized that she had too much power because of her boon. And it was like it had turned Castle Vantris and like the surrounding areas into like a frozen ice zone that killed people. So anyhow, and so Kellen hears this and is very upset that he's been lied to because he's very young and impressionable and thought this was a noble quest. And so he goes to Talia and flings the crown at his feet. He's like, did you seriously lie to me? And Talian's like, I did what had to be done. Do you want to know about your dad or not? Yes, okay. Well, all right, here's your 3rd witch. She's in Castle Ardenvale. Go get her. So this is going to set them up for a conflict with Rowan. So now our storylines have come back together. They go to Castle Ardenvale. They're like, man, what happened out here? The doors have been blasted apart. There's lightning torns up all the steps. What's going on? It's crazy.
Looks like someone real mad came in here.
It must have been the site of this epic battle. They're like, this is like, we're getting such bad vibes from this place. God, and look what happened here. Yikes, which is kind of funny. Oh, I forgot to mention, as they are traveling to Castle Ardenvale, Ruby gets a giant, Ruby's boon is a sword as big as she is. She has a huge ice sword. Because she gets something from Hilda.
Nice.
Which is very nice. Hilda's very generous to them, they're traveling there, and the wicked slumber has gotten way worse. Like the last time they passed through the village with the pies where he picked up Ruby, there was like one person asleep, but now there's dozens.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, the wicked slumber seems to be something has caused the wicked slumber to accelerate in its power.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So anyhow, but
Maybe someone who just loves having people asleep.
Yes, and maybe the help of her niece.
I was thinking Ashiok, but yeah, sorry.
Oh yeah.
Maybe all three.
Yeah. Anyhow, so they get to the castle and they're like, how are we going to get in? But they still have one potion of Frogify left over from Troyan. So they jump in, essentially. It's very fun. And they bypass all the guards and go right to a room where Rowan is doing something. She is taking notes about putting things to sleep because it's not Ashiok who's helping. Ashiok has had to leave to attend to business in the Ashiok way that Ashiok does these things. I'll be back. And Rowan is helping her aunt, and Rowan is trying to learn to master the sleeping because she thinks she's helping. So anyhow, they get in there. They're like, oh, it's Rowan. Hooray! Rowan, we're going to go kill the witch. I'm so glad you're here to help us. And then Rowan knocks them out with a sleeping spell. But not a very good sleeping spell because Ruby wakes up very quickly. And
Rowan's new at this.
yeah, and it's not her vibe.
No.
She's more of an exploding things vibe. She wakes up Kellen in short order, but says she was saying something about helping us, and it's like I guess she didn't want our involvement, and then they are like, all right, we need to like do something about this witch though, and now we're in this dungeon. But then suddenly, boom, crash! Some sort of cavalry shows up because it's Will. Because they also know the source of the wicked slumber at this point, and he shows up with a bunch of his knights, including Imodane, who they rescued and is now rallied to Will's cause.
Will learning all this was not interesting enough to tell you.
I mean,
Right.
Well, probably because he did it very practically and calmly.
yeah, there's probably messages were sent, reconnaissance and report.
An exchange of owls.
Isn't that just like one of the classic like ways that writers can offer up, serotonin or whatever to the reader is when the reader can piece together easily what a character must have learned off script or off scene. Like, yeah, you know what I mean. Like you can tell that if they're there and they're helping, then. There's a
word count involved, and we don't need a recount of Will learning the same things that Kellen is learning in a less interesting way.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyhow, Will shows up, and he's here to have a fight. And Ariette, even though Ariette cannot hold off Will's forces, like he's brought a phalanx of the best knights of the land, and she's only got sleeping soldiers, and she can't control them all at once. She's no Liliana, right? Ashiok's not there, so Rowan goes to help out, which sort of turns the tide of battle. And then Will is fighting Rowan, but all of the knights are stepping aside, and they're having a big dramatic showdown where Will is trying to reassure her and say I'm sorry and stuff like that. What's going on? Why can't we work together? And Rowan is like, no, I'm saving everyone. It's important. And Will kind of realizes that she is the reason the curse has gotten worse, and that and then she thinks she's helping and she's working with the witch. And Will's like, I don't even know you anymore. It's so ridiculous. And it's very dramatic. And while all of this is happening, it's Kellen and Ruby who've escaped from the dungeon, and they're coming after Ariette, and then with things are looking great for the heroes, and then all of a sudden Ashiok is like, whip. Oh no, right? And is like suddenly all of the Will's forces who are awake and fighting start to fall asleep because it's Ashiok, right? And he just puts them under and brings them to his cause. And then now Will is cornered and stuff like that. And Rowan is about to, probably kill him because she's not acting sensibly because she thinks now Ashiok is back. And she sees Kellen and Ruby mucking about, and she's like, with Ashiok's here, I don't need to worry about them. And it's all very dramatic. Will shoots this, and as she's about as she's sort of like, now is the time I get you, brother, Will shoots this big zap of ice magic. And it misses her, and she's like, pfft. But then everything starts to stop because he wasn't aiming at her. He was aiming at Ashiok, who was being held by Kellen. Because Kellen and Ruby had figured out Ashiok was the person helping the sleeping magic. We see all of this battle from Will and Rowan's point of view. And when Ashiok gets hit by the ice magic, he's like, or they are like, bleh, and spark out, like planes walk away. And Rowan is like, they still have their spark. Because she did not realize what had happened. And sort of goes, makes a big explosion and sort of like ninja smoke vanishes.
So Rowan figures out she still has her own spark?
No,
or
Ashiok still has their
spark?
spark.
Okay.
And Rowan is very hurt.
Okay, so she ninja vanishes, but just like on the plane, like she sneaks off.
Yeah, she planes
walk away.
No,
okay.
Rowan does not have her spark, but she basically makes a huge bolt of lightning that she channels at her feet so she can sort of throw herself clear of the whole environment. She basically... No!
Team Rocket blasting off again.
Yeah. She Quake rocket jumps out of there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
basically,
yeah.
Basically, it's very dramatic. She's a very dramatic person. And then, yay! So if Rowan's leaving and Ashiok's leaving, what happens to Ariette? Well, Kellen gives back. Kellen is successful and it's wonderful. Yay!
Is Ariette demised?
So Kellen, you next see after the conclusion of this, Kellen is back at home. His mother and his stepdad are so happy to see him, blah, blah, blah. The wicked slumber has been lifted. They're so proud of him. And his mom gives him this lovely cloak to welcome him home and blah, 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 blah. And they get home and and mom's like, would you like some tea? And he's like, yes, please. And his stepdad's like, right, I've just got to pop to the store to get some tea. See you later, right? Good parenting.
Right.
And he finally learns the truth about his dad because his mother has made him this beautiful cloak. She's been weaving it for years. And all about his story. And it tells the story of how there is this girl and she met this mysterious man while she was gathering nightshade for her mistress, who was a witch who was training her. And the mysterious man was all in blue. He was painted blue, and he had many faces and liked to visit her. Mm-hmm. And then he told her about all these stories about other wonderful realms in exchange for her telling him all about Eldraine, who he had just arrived in, where he had just arrived. And it turns out this was Oko. And they got to know each other over the period of 5 years, and they became wonderful, good friends. And without Oko, Kellen's mom never would have escaped her mistress because she was in training to be a witch, but she has some witchy powers.
Was the witch that was training Kellen's mom the one that died?
No idea. That's not specified.
Okay.
But it is important to say that, there's good witches and bad witches. And some of them...
Wizard of Oz told us that.
Yeah. But Kellen's mom still has lots of years of witchy training power. And
Kellen's dad is Oko.
Kellen's dad is Oko.
Okay.
And the reason why Oko doesn't like Eldraine very much is because he thought Kellen's mom was a great person, but because she was working with a witch, nobody trusted her because it turns out maybe she was working with one of the bad witches, even though she wasn't a bad person herself. And she was kind of persecuted. And eventually Oko decided, you know what? Screw this entire structure. F these people. They are assholes. And basically...
What if I turn that king into an elk? Peace.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
So, so Oko, not sort of anti-establishment, we'll say.
I didn't realize Oko wasn't from Eldraine.
I thought Oko was from Eldraine, too. I just assumed.
No,
okay.
he's...
But I guess no one else on Eldraine is blue, apart from Vidalkin.
Well, he's all over
But
blue.
Vidalkin's also not from Eldraine.
So anyhow, yeah. So basically, but Kellen's mom was like, look, I can't go with you. Like, he couldn't take me with him. And I didn't want to be a queen. I just wanted to live a simple life. So they amicably parted ways. Huh. And she moved out to a very rural village and is just like, I'm just going to be a peaceful lady from now on with my son. And then got married and blah, 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 blah. Has a lovely life now. Because that's all she ever wanted. And Kellen's like, oh, okay, interesting.
But who never visits?
Yeah, I know. Basically he does say that. He says, "Okay, but why has my dad never visited me? Doesn't he care? Doesn't he want to know me? Why doesn't he like me?"
Why don't he want me, man?
Yeah, exactly. It's, a very human instinct. So he goes out for a walk, and he sees at the top of a hill a mysterious portal to the fairy realm. No, it's an omen path. I'm going through.
Back. There we go.
Can
Can I ask a question? Sorry.
And then one more. And then Ariette awakens
Oh.
in a dungeon. She's been chained up there by Will to be tried for her crimes. Her apple is gone. She's got no power left. She's very sad. And then, boop, Ashiok shows up and says, "Don't worry, not all is lost. Why don't you come with me?" And she goes, "Well, I need to get my niece Rowan." And he's like, No, Rowan's fine on their own. We don't need Rowan. And she's like, "Well, if Ashiok says we don't need Rowan, I'm sure we'll be okay." Because Ashiok's, they only care about themselves. They don't care about Rowan.
Right.
They don't give a crap. And Ariette's like, "Oh, well, if you say it's okay, let's go then." Because Ariette's also awful, but Ashiok whisks her away. They go off.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the story.
Dang.
What happens to the apple? Do we find out if Kellen brings the apple to Talion, or
I assume so, because he has to bring the crown. We just kind of skip to the end.
sure?
Basically.
Does Talion ever make good on the promise to
yes,
give that same
sorry.
conversation
Yes,
that
yes.
Kellen had with his mom? Okay.
Well, no, but because what happens is, sorry, I forgot this. This was actually a kind of an important part. So good question. It's never said on screen, but it is revealed later while he's talking to his mom that Kellen turned in the apple and said that his wish was to ask his mom what had happened, not to hear it from Talion.
Because he trusts his mom
More than Talion.
That makes sense. All right.
Because Talion lied to him.
Yeah.
All right, so there's the story.
Sweet. Awesome. Thank you for that. Now I'm much more up to speed on all the story. Now, before we wrap up, I want to look at, there's a cycle of cards from the previews. We saw, as Kathleen was talking, we saw some of the witches and their legendary artifacts and whatever, but there's a cycle of cards. Typically, I think these would be the signpost on commons. I assume that they are, but I haven't really looked into the mechanics at all because the previews are just coming out and I'm still sort of processing everything that's in the set. But we have the 10 multicolor uncommons. They're all legends. They're legendary creatures, and they're all inspired by specific fairy tales. And I don't know all of them necessarily, so I just want to quickly run through them and talk about them.
More lore.
Yeah. So, let's take a look at these ones here. So we've got Ash Party Crasher, red white for a 2/2 with haste and celebration. This is a new mechanic, similar to sort of Alliance or Landfall or whatever, but it's non-land permanent. So whenever Ash Party Crasher attacks, if 2 or more non-land permanents entered the battlefield under your control this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Ash. What story is this? It's some sort
Ash
of
is not in
uninvited
the story.
guest. No. I mean, what
fairy
What
tale?
Grimm's fairy tale is this?
Oh.
Because like some of them is like, that's Jack and the Beanstalk. That's Little Red Riding Hood. This one, I don't know this one. I don't know the story of the uninvited party guest.
Right.
So, okay, cool.
The well-dressed knight who showed up and drank all our wine and danced on our table and then left after she broke all our furniture.
Yeah. It's just a cool looking card. All right.
Germans, let us know which story this is.
Greta, Sweet Tooth Scourge.
That's the surviving one that you
Yes.
mentioned.
1 black-green for a 3/3 human warrior. When Greta's Sweet Tooth Scourge enters the battlefield, create a food. For a black and sacrifice a food, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Activate only as a sorcery. And for 1 and a black and sacrifice a food, you draw a card and lose 1 life. And yeah, basically Greta is out to fight all the candy monsters because her brother, I don't know the name of the...
Hansel, right?
Well,
Oh,
so
but
it's
in game or whatever.
it's Hansel and Gretel, but this
Right.
is Greta, so I don't know. Hansa? I don't know.
Okay.
Hansel? Anyway,
Sir not appearing in this set.
yeah. So I guess we assume Boros does stuff with celebration. Shockingly, Golgari, food. That makes a lot of sense. I like that you can. I like that Greta gives you options to sacrifice food for other benefits. That seems cool.
Yeah,
Also,
nice.
with celebration, Greta enters the battlefield, creates a food. So that's your celebration trigger right there. That's
turned on immediately.
two
Yeah.
non-land permanents.
And there's quite a few.
There's a lot of creatures that make food.
Yeah. So there you go.
Next, Johann, Apprentice Sorcerer. 2 blue-red for a 2/5. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. Once each turn, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from the top of your library. And then flavor text. Okay, first I'll calm the elementals. Then I'll put out the fire. Then I'll unflood the basement. Then I'll do the chores myself. So this is, Apprentice Sorcerer. It's the Sorcerer's Apprentice. It's,
I'm going to start watching Fantasia every night again.
Yeah, exactly. A reminder, of course, Sorcerer's Apprentice was a story before Mickey Mouse made a bajillion brooms.
Yeah, I would actually like to point out, like, when you think, obviously, when we think this, the Snow White Witch, where probably most of us are thinking about Disney, but all of these were classic tales that were adapted by Disney.
Disney casts such a long shadow.
I know.
I was talking to some people recently that didn't realize Beauty and the Beast was a novel from like the 1800s in France,
Wow.
like well before.
I'm aware that it's a story from, European history or whatever, but the Snow Queen always makes me think of C.S. Lewis. Because I grew up with that. We watched that a lot of times.
Oh, yeah,
in
Narnia,
books. Yeah,
for sure.
so I just think of the.
I think a lot of
White
I
Witch
think
from-
I think
'cause there's a
Snow
corollary
Queen.
there, probably. Yeah.
I think Snow Queen has its roots in Narnia.
Okay.
Because I don't think there's a Snow Queen in the early Disney stuff up until Frozen anyway.
Right.
So, moving on. Neva, Stalked by Nightmares. 2 white-black for a 2/2 with Menace. When she enters the battlefield, return target creature or enchantment from your graveyard to your hand. Love that. Whenever an enchantment you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Neva, then scry 1. So, so obviously blue-red spells. Black-white is doing enchantment shenanigans, enchantment and graveyard stuff. The actual card for Ariette has a lot of
The word graveyard and enchantment on it.
enchantment, yeah.
Who's this?
Sleeping Beauty.
Oh, right.
Oh, of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hadn't picked up on that.
The vibe of the art didn't scream Sleeping Beauty to me, but yes, obviously the vibe of the mechanic and the
Yeah.
So
the action.
So we know that Ariette is making the Wicked Slumber, and we know that she is being helped by Ashiok,
Yeah.
and we know that they are not known for pleasant dreams.
Uh-huh.
Right.
So
Something nightmare something.
Oh, I think everyone under the Wicked Slumber is having horrible nightmares the whole time.
Yeah.
And Ariette and Ashiok are loving it.
Probably,
Okay.
yeah.
Poor Rowan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next. Obira, Dreaming Duelist. Blue-black for a 2/2 flash flying fairy. Whenever another fairy enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life. Obira sleepwalks through the wilds, hunting for worthy opponents.
So this person's actually affected by the Wicked
slumber.
Slumber.
I guess so, yeah. So obviously, mechanically, black-blue fairies, black-blue fairies, and not just fairies, but cares about fairies.
Shudders and competitive Magic player from 2004.
Yeah. I have no idea what fairy tale this is supposed to be.
Like, could it be something to do with another Sleeping Beauty situation where it's like this person is also asleep? Is there another?
Is there like some sort of like great warrior kind of fairy tale?
Sure.
Probably.
Let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
we don't know what this one is.
Please do.
Excuse me.
Next, we've got... It's Ruby. Ruby gets her own card.
Yay.
Ruby, Daring Tracker. Red-green for a 1/2 human scout with haste. Whenever Ruby attacks while you control a creature with power 4 or greater, Ruby gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Also just taps for mana, taps for red or green. So, yeah, being able to play like a 2 mana mana, well, not elf, it's human scout, but that taps immediately fits into curve a lot more nicely in some situations.
Yeah, only 1 mana for your storm count.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I guess when if you control a creature.
If
if
you
you-
have her brother, if she's attacking alongside her brother, she's even more powerful.
Right. There you go. Neither the sharpest thorns nor the foulest beast would stop her from finding her brother. So yes, obviously there's a Little Red Riding Hood.
Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I don't know if her brother has a card, but I assume like mechanically, if it's a creature power 4 or greater, that's the mechanical representation of her caring
Yeah,
about
I was trying to think. It's like if defending player controls a creature, like a bigger creature, then it makes sense because it's like the wolf. But no, it's if you control. So I'm not entirely sure. So I guess I'm going with your interpretation. Moving on. Charret of Numbing Depths. 2 white-blue for a 2/3 merfolk wizard. When Charret of Numbing Depths enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. Whenever you tap one or more untapped creatures your opponents control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. I've been doing this only every 2 cards for some reason. Red-green, I guess, has like a ferocious, like unkeyworded ferocious sub-theme. It cares about creatures 4 or greater. I'm inferring. And then Azorius here looking at tapping your opponent's creatures, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I also don't know what possible...
I tap your creature tribal?
No, I mean, what possible fairy tale this merfolk is supposed to be. Numbing Depths. Something about like a frozen water.
Maybe,
like
it's just you're tapping the creatures. It's a merfolk it's a mer person who mesmerizes things. That's just mermaids.
I guess, yeah.
A mermaid.
Yeah.
A siren? No.
Yeah.
They have not creature type siren here, but
There's a lot of stories in the Grimm's fairy tales that did not necessarily get translated to Mother Goose, which is what I was read as a kid. So, next we have Sir Armont the Redeemer, 3 green-white for a 4/4 human knight. When it enters the battlefield, create a monster roll token attached to another target creature you control. And enchanted creatures you control get +1/+1. This is really cool. The rolls are token auras, and that's obviously the theme for this color pair. But also they're in the set in other colors, and that's really neat.
Another card that gives you that celebration right away, like any permanent that brings one of these roll tokens with it.
Oh yeah,
Trigger
right.
your celebration immediately.
There you go. Yeah. I don't particularly know what specific fairy tale is happening here, but looking cool.
Okay.
Next, Totentance Swarm Piper. It's the Pied Piper. 1 black-red for a 2/3 human warlock bard. Whenever Totentance or another non-token creature you control dies, create a 1/1 black rat creature token with this creature can't block. And for 1 and a black, target attacking rat you control gains Death Touch until end of turn. The red-black sub-theme is rats.
Fun.
Rats.
And we know who this is.
Yeah, it's
Pied
the Pied
Piper.
Piper.
Yeah.
Hampstead, I think.
Oh,
I think that's the story.
Oh, which village the Pied Piper's from? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Anyway.
But yeah, very cool.
Cool.
I just remembered, sorry, I read Mark Rosewater's article, or most of it, anyways, before my food arrived, and then I had to go. But original Eldraine started off as a combination of a Camelot set and a fairy tale set.
Yeah.
So Sir Armand probably just represents like Galahad or Percival, like one of the knights of the round
that makes
table
sense.
of the...
It's
Court
funny
of
because
Camelot.
they did announce that at some point in the next several years we're going back to Lorwyn, right? But now the Wilds of Eldraine is moving even further into, pardon the food pun, eating Lorwyn's lunch with stuff like there's oof and there's red caps and things like that. Like there's a lot more of the, everything but Kithkin really. There's a lot more of the Lorwyn stuff.
Lorwyn
in
has
the set.
tree folk too, and I don't know if we've gotten tree folk in Eldraine.
That's true.
Have we got like 1 or something?
I don't recall.
But I did notice that, especially like when the red caps came out in the first set. I was like, oh, I guess this is really, just swiping Lorwyn, right?
Yeah, new Lorwyn.
But, and I've said it on some other products we've made recently, like, Lorwyn, unlike other sets, has the Aurora. And, like, Shadowmoor is an interesting, weird, scary place, and we all love weird, scary planes. So I'm looking forward to, like, what Wizards gives us, and I think it's going to be fine. they'll just dig deeper into like what Lorwyn is. 'Cause,
Fair enough.
You know, we've only had one set, well, 4 sets, but 1 year of looking at Lorwyn cards, and that was a long time ago. So
Yeah,
like with
that's
today's resources at R&D, like I think there'll still be a great Lorwyn set in the future for
All
us.
right. Well, I'm looking forward to it regardless.
Cautiously optimistic. I'll
Yeah.
say cautiously optimistic.
We've got a couple more of these. We have Troyan.
There he is.
Oh, Troyan's
Yeah,
okay,
Gutsy
sweet.
Explorer. 1 green blue for a 1/3 Vidalcan Scout. Tap to add green blue. So he taps for 2 mana. Spend this mana only to cast spells with mana value 5 or greater, or with X in their mana cost.
That's such a Simic thing to do.
Yeah. And for blue and tap, you get to loot. So blue and tap, draw a card, discard a card. The streets of Ravnica were stifling. Eldraine is an endless adventure paved in gold.
There he is. He's on a beanstalk.
So this one's some magic IP. It's not a Grimm's fairy tale reference.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
and
it's
Jack
Jack
and
and
the
the Beanstalk.
Sure, yeah, Jack's Beanstalk is there, but the character isn't from any
True,
version of
yeah,
Jack
yeah,
and the Beanstalk
yeah.
except this one.
But he's got the golden egg and everything. I love again, the mechanic here obviously is big spells or X spells, and that's great. Love that. Is that all 10? Do we have more?
That's all 10.
That's all 10. Great. In that case, just before we sign off, can we see what you want to be casting with Troyan? Because I love the Goose Mother.
Oh yeah, the Goose Mother's just a fantastic piece of art.
Hydroid Goosus. X green blue for a 2/2 flying bird Hydra. It enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. And when it enters the battlefield, you create half X food tokens rounded up. And whenever the Goose Mother attacks, you may sacrifice a food. And if you do, draw a card. I love this.
When you beat a Canadian with this card, it's even harder than, or even harsher than other people. Like this is, I'm already trying to prepare myself for the trauma of getting crushed by this card. In
Just
draft.
love, I think that's so funny that it's like, oh, let's make a card referencing Mother Goose. The Goose Mother. It's great. Goose Hydra. What a mess. I love it.
Terrifying.
Yeah, I'm terrified.
Absolutely terrible.
Cobra chicken monster.
It's got the same number of wings as a regular goose, but it's so much more angry. It's got such a greater capability for hatred with
It's
all those
got
different
7
brains.
heads.
When you
know.
cut off one of these goose's heads, do 2 more grow back?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Oh no.
That's why it's got
it's not
7
okay.
heads.
Yeah,
Awful.
terrible.
Oh boy. All right. I am so excited. I'm so excited for this set.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to play this set. I'm really, really, really looking forward to it. So you're going to want to see us do that this coming Saturday if you are able to tune in live, and if not, it'll be up on this channel soon. But yeah, the PPR pre-release again with our guests, Lady Lavinius, Jumbo Commander, and Chris Mooney. Very excited to have all 3 of them up here, and I am very much looking forward to that. 10 a.m. Pacific time on this coming August 26th, Saturday. Until next time, I'm going to remind everybody that TapTapConcede is brought to you by Card Kingdom. Please check out cardkingdom.com/LRR.
Woo.
We really appreciate it. Tell them we sent you. Get yourself a button. And of course, this show and everything we do is brought to you by you and your kind support over Patreon at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. Thank you. Until next time, I have been Graham, joined by Kathleen
Hello.
and Nelson.
Hi.
James has been on tech. Heather gets these online. Thank you all so much for listening and watching, and we'll talk to you